Welcome, Laker fans. This is Mark Medina with the LA Times Lakers blog, and with the game coming up, Lakers hosting the Portland Trailblazers Sunday at Staples Center. Naturally, we'll have a Lakers round table, and naturally, because it's against Portland, we bring in an esteemed guest of ours that's a frequent visitor to the show, Matt Calkins with the Columbian. He covers the Blazers for that newspaper. How you doing today?
A little too frequent. Is there really no one else you can get for this?
You know what? The thing is, the standard is so high as far as them being able to match up to your capabilities that it's just like, if I settle for anyone else, people are going to be disappointed because of everything that you bring to the table.
I understand. As long as I'm getting paid my quote, that's all that's really motivating me. It's cool.
All right, well, we'll talk about that later. But for now, the Lakers are playing Portland, and the news coming out of Laker camp is that Andrew Bynum is going to be suspended for 2 games. That includes tonight's game against Portland. He had a flagrant foul type 2 Friday against Minnesota where he used his right forearm tonight and knocked down Michael Beasley as he drove to the basket. The NBA didn't respond in any fashion on Saturday, so the Lakers weren't sure if it was playing fast, but they just determined today that Bynum would be suspended for 2 games without pay. From Portland's end, how does that affect things?
Well, it kind of makes me wonder if, instead of traditional seeding based on record, there should be, some sort of selection committee for the postseason, because Portland really, as well as they're playing, they've gotten a lot of breaks like that. Dwight Howard was suspended for getting his 16th technical the last time Portland and Orlando met, so he wasn't there, and Portland got the victory. Last night against Philadelphia, a surging Sixers team, Andre Iguodala, was out of the lineup due to injury. Carmelo Anthony, although that's working out for Denver, was traded 2 days before the last time those two teams met. Portland got the win. And now Andrew Bynum, who's a good player in any capacity, but is particularly dangerous against Portland, who struggles with lengthy and big teams. He's out of the lineup, and I think the Blazers suddenly have a chance. So they've been very fortunate, though they are playing really well as well.
So how do you explain these cosmic forces in effect that's kind of benefiting Portland here?
Portland, it's a little bit of a hipster gypsy town, so I've been making the rounds, going to some different tarot card readers and psychic healers and that stuff, and I still haven't really put a finger on it. But, right. I'm getting closer to locking down that story. It certainly has to do with certain players, I think, being a Sagittarius and Taurus. That's what I'm narrowing it down to. But I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. Well, from an X's and O's standpoint, what can Portland do to kind of take advantage of the length and the size that they don't have now with Andrew out of the lineup?
It's funny. That question is really more rooted in the X's than the O's. But the X's are telling me is that suddenly, well, here's the thing. Portland is very versatile now with Gerald Wallace on the roster. They can go big when they have to and put Marcus Camby in there. They can go smaller when they need to and put Gerald Wallace in there. And that speedy lineup has really helped them. That's what we saw last night against Philadelphia. That's what we've seen against Dallas. That smaller, quicker lineup exploiting teams and allowing them to outrun them in some capacity, which was a non-existent factor before. So that's what Nate McMillan is going to try to emphasize tonight against LA, a team that they've struggled against all season long. But I think with Gerald Wallace in the lineup, that presents problems for the Lakers that we haven't seen before. I did a little research myself. I saw you asking Ron Artest about that, and I remember he wasn't too informed as to who the Blazers even gave up when they got Wallace. But this is a different team, so I was
homework here.
Yeah, a little bit. I just like to hear the sound of your voice, and so. I wouldn't throw out, per se, the previous 2 games, but without Bynum and without Wallace, this is definitely a different game than what we've seen before.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the question that I asked Ron Artest because, as you noted, he offered zero insight. He didn't know. It doesn't even seem like he reads scouting reports on any opponent, or he's just kind of playing with us. But I talked with the assistant coach of the Lakers, Chuck Person. He's in charge of putting together the team's scouting report on Portland. He provided a little bit more detailed insight as far as Gerald Wallace is concerned. His standpoint was that with his addition, it's done two things. It's really made them more of a threat, from an offensive standpoint on the glass, and it's also increased the team's tempo. What have you seen in those two respects?
I've seen both. I've also seen an energy that he brings to this team. He used to come off the bench for a while until Marcus Camby had a little bit of soreness and Nate McMillan inserted him in the starting lineup. But what you would see is you used to see a big drop-off once that second unit came in, and now you've almost seen more of a surge when Gerald Wallace come off the bench, and he's able to kind of sustain that same energy in the regular, when he comes in, when he starts the game. Sorry, man, it's early for me. I'm having trouble putting words together in an appropriate manner. But he's revitalized his team, and coming with Brandon Roy, you got to remember Brandon Roy missed most of the season, and even when he was playing, he wasn't really himself. And although he's had a couple of lackluster games, the past couple games in competitive contests, he's looked like the Brandon Roy of old. He scored 21 points in 27 minutes in a win over Dallas earlier, really kind of took over the game. And when you add him and Gerald Wallace, I almost feel like you've got like an all-star and a half or an all-star and three quarters added to this lineup post-all-star break, which I think is making a lot of teams kind of look over their shoulders when it comes to playing Portland in the postseason.
Now, another thing from the Lakers end, they've suffered, a pretty banged-up Kobe Bryant. He's had a sprained left ankle ever since the game against Dallas on Saturday, and then during the Minnesota game, he collided heads with Martell Webster, and he did not look in good shape afterwards. He had a really stiff neck, stiff shoulder. He's rarely in a good mood with us, but he really wasn't in a good mood afterwards. And, he's planning on playing today, but through this month of March, especially since his ankle injury, he hasn't shot the ball well. And when you look at the historical performances that Kobe's had against Portland, there's been plenty of times he's gotten his points that he usually does, but a lot of times it's come at the expense of a balanced offense, and it's come at the expense of a pretty poor shooting clip. What's Portland done historically to at least try to, limit his effectiveness?
I don't know the historical research in great detail. I know that he really struggled against Portland in the first half. It was the last time they played, but it was pretty typical Kobe. I mean, the thing about Kobe is people tend to just throw out the numbers, their shooting percentages, and look at the results. And I think that's pretty fair to a certain extent, although there have been guys that have come and picked up the slack in games past. But, he came in, I think it was like 4 for 15 or something in the first half, and then took over the game, scoring the last 4 points of regulation, hitting a jumper with 5 seconds left to send the game into overtime. Classic clutch Kobe, giving the fans everything that they wanted to see. Brandon Roy, confirming after the game that this guy is no doubt the most clutch player in basketball. And this is right after that Henry Abbott article came out, kind of exposing Kobe's true clutchness. But he was everything that he was advertised to be. I don't think the Lakers look at him as something they've been shutting down or containing. I think their main strategy is to cross their fingers. And I don't know if that's different from any other team in the league.
We're talking with the Columbian's Matt Calkins. You can follow him on Twitter at Blazer Banter. And I did some math here, Matt. I was looking at Twitter, and I'm looking at the numbers here. You have 2,004 followers. I'm looking at my Twitter account at LAT Medina. I have 2,768. I don't bring this up to say, I have more followers. I'm bringing this up because proportionally, you have more followers than me. I've been doing the Lakers blog for a little bit longer. How have you been able to catch such a following at a much faster rate than I have.
I'm coming for you, baby. I'm coming for you. I chalk it up to my dedication in creating Mac Twitter accounts and following myself. It's put a lot of work into it, but image is everything, and if I'm gonna look legitimate, I have to have at least 2,000 followers. So putting the work in there.
Now, one item that you had that I thought was pretty interesting on your Twitter account recently was Nate McMillan. You ever heard him breaking down film? And it sounds like he's not a fan of the 3 goggles. What's up with that?
I think Nate McMillan is a very reluctant fan. For those who don't, do people know about the 3 goggles? He said it's nationwide. I don't know how.
I wanted you to explain this because I had no idea what this was referring to.
Oh, really? Okay, so the 3 goggles are certainly a Northwest phenomenon right now. Towards the beginning of the season, Rudy Fernandez, Blazers shooting guard, was struggling with his 3-point shot, and Patty Mills, the backup point guard, was, saying that it was his vision, and he just couldn't see the basket. He was struggling with his vision. So what he needed to do was put on the 3-point goggles, the 3 goggles. And so it kind of became an inside joke where every time Rudy hit a 3, he would look at Patty on the bench and kind of make the A-OK sign with both hands, and then put the circle over his eyes, So that's the 3 goggles. And they would do it back and forth, and then Wesley Matthews, who's pretty good friends with those guys, kind of got in on the mix. So every time he's really been coming on. He's been on fire lately. I think he's 5th in 3-pointers made in the NBA right now. So he would throw them on every time. He would do it very slick, and, he would knock down a 3. He would just stand there and pose, put the 3 goggles on, and then kind of trot back on defense. And now there are T-shirts being made showing the 3 goggles. There's a Wikipedia entry about the 3 goggles. The Marquette men's basketball team is doing it, kind of as an homage to Wesley Matthews. I don't know if it's an homage, but they kind of got it from him. But now Nate McMillan's saying, guys, you guys are posing, and these guys are going right past you on transition defense. And I think what he said is, those are the 3 goggles, but they must be bifocals because we can't see the big men blowing right past us. But they're still doing it. They're still having a good time. And I think I said that Nate's kind of doing his Johnny Cochran impression because he was like, all right, you made the D, or you made the 3, get back on D. I think it's got a kind of poetic ring to it.
Now, there's not a lot of games left in this regular season. The playoffs are starting, the intensity's ratcheting up, and looking at the standings right now, if the season were to end today, the Lakers would play New Orleans, 2nd and 7th seed. Portland would play Dallas. But obviously there's a lot of games left. There's a very good chance that the Lakers could play Portland in the first round. This is a 2-part question. Break down how Portland would match up with the Lakers. Then when we're done with that, we'll go into how they could match up with Dallas.
Okay. The Blazers do not want the Lakers. They want no part of them just because that is a tough matchup. Obviously, and we've talked about this a couple times before, the fans, not even just the casual fans, but fans worldwide, they look at the Lakers and say, Kobe Bryant, that's the key to their success. And to a large extent, they're correct, but people who on the inside say, just as much, it's about their length, it's about that size. I forget who it was who tweeted that, the Lakers, it was someone from another team, like, they should never go for Carmelo Anthony in exchange for Bynum because the reason they're so tough to beat is size. Blazers, quite frankly, don't have that. They're 2 backup centers. At one point, were both under 10-day contracts. Chris Johnson and Jaron Collins. They have Marcus Camby and LaMarcus Aldridge. You can play them in the middle, but they're not nearly as dangerous as Gasol and Bynum and Odom or any of those guys. Well, LaMarcus is. LaMarcus Camby isn't. So they don't want any part of them. And there's also kind of another theory. I don't buy into this at all. But some people kind of think, hey, there's no way the NBA is going to let the Lakers lose in the first round. I'm not on that train, but there are some people who think like that. So they want the Mavericks without a doubt. And the Mavericks, it's probably not fair to them, But they have a history. They sort of have a reputation of being a team that you can knock out in the first round, knock out in the second round. They have the record, they have the ability, and I think they're really dangerous, but the reputation precedes them. So the Blazers, I think, definitely want Dallas, probably even more so than they want Oklahoma City. I think the Mavericks are the perfect matchup for them.
Wow, I mean, you mentioned, obviously, Dallas has lost in the first round 3 of the past 4 seasons. As far as the head-to-head goes, I mean, what makes them a better opponent than even Oklahoma City?
Well, Oklahoma City is just revitalized right now. I mean, they got Perkins. They've really beefed up the size aspect of the lineup. And I was talking to somebody at the Blazers. They're just kind of pointing out that Dallas doesn't really run anything. They've got Dirk, who's possibly the most underrated player in the league. They've got, a lot of different weapons, but Tyson Chandler is not really a dynamic center, and their offense is a little bit stagnant. And I think the thought is if you watch them enough times and, if certain players get hot for the Blazers, you could just surprise them. I still don't think the Blazers are getting out of the first round. I think they are vastly surpassing expectations, but I still think they're out in the first round in 6 or 7 games type of team. But they are somebody who can win the first round, which wasn't something people were saying a month ago. Those are the thoughts of the Columbian's Matt Calkins. Matt, I appreciate all your time, and hopefully I'll be able to keep up with you in the Twitter race wars. It's going to be something. What do you think? What do you think we're going to, do you think the race is to 4,000? The way I'm going, I'm an unstoppable force right now. I mean, you're basically, I got a head start, and you're just catching up to me, so it's really a matter of time, and, I feel like once I put this up on the blog, you'll continue to outpace me even more. The truth is, I started with 2,300 followers, picking up for the last guy, so I think you're going to be okay.